She told me I was too broken to be a father. My dad said I wasn't his son anymore. They said that right after making love on the couch in his office. The recording hit 2:47 a.m., and my wife Sarah's breath came through. Not the usual kind of breath. The kind she only ever used twice in her life, our wedding night, and the night she got drunk and forgot she looked down on me for being a poor air conditioning repairman. I threw up on the floor. Then I sat in the dark until sunrise. And when the sun came up, I wasn't the stupid Jack Morgan anymore. I was Jack Morgan, the man my family should never have betrayed. If you've ever felt betrayed, abandoned, listen to my story. Because sometimes, one moment can change your entire life. My name is Jack Morgan. I'm a 36-year-old veteran living in a small town in northern Michigan. After returning from deployment, I thought I'd find peace. Instead, I found a life full of broken promises and shattered dreams. I fix air conditioners for a living, a job far from the construction business my family built. It's honest work, but it feels like I'm stuck in a shadow no one can see. At home, the silence is heavier than the machines I repair. Sarah and I barely speak anymore. The house feels colder than the winter nights outside. My father, Robert, has all but erased me from the family picture. He treats me like a stranger, a failed son who didn't live up to expectations. Every Sunday dinner is a reminder of what I lost: respect, love, trust. Instead, I get judgment and cold looks like I'm an outsider in my own life. But beneath all that pain, I'm still here, still fighting, still trying to find a way back. This isn't just my story. It's the story of so many who come home only to feel more lost than ever. Every day felt heavier than the last. I'd wake up before dawn, the cold Michigan air seeping through the cracked windows of that old cottage my grandmother left me. The place was falling apart, roof leaking, pipes rattling, furnace barely holding on. But it was mine, the only piece of my past that felt real. Fixing air conditioners wasn't just a job, it was my way of holding on. Every squeak, every hum of those machines reminded me that something could still work, even if everything else was broken. But at home, the silence was deafening. Sarah barely looked at me. Our conversations were short, clipped, filled with things left unsaid. I could see it in her eyes, a mix of resentment and distance. And my father? Robert wouldn't return my calls. He avoided me like I was a ghost. The man who once taught me how to build things now pretended I didn't exist. I was trapped between a life I couldn't escape and a family that no longer wanted me. Yet deep down, I knew I couldn't give up. There had to be a way to fix this, just like I fixed those broken machines. One cold evening, after another silent dinner, I sat alone in the dim light of the kitchen. The house creaked around me, every sound amplified by the heavy weight of betrayal. That's when the mailbox creaked open, and a small silver flash drive slipped inside. No note, no explanation. Just the cold metal device resting against the worn wood. I stared at it, heart pounding. My hands shook as I plugged it into my laptop. The screen flickered, and then came the sound that shattered what little piece I had left. Voices, Sarah's breathless moan, and then my father's unmistakable voice. The recording dragged me back into a nightmare I couldn't wake from. They weren't just strangers. They were family. I hit rewind over and over, each playback driving the knife deeper into my chest. The man who was supposed to protect me was the one tearing me apart. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark, swallowed by silence and rain pounding against the windows. Something inside me shifted. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a fight I never saw coming. The next morning the rain had stopped, but the weight in my chest hadn't lifted. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the cracked mug that had slipped from my hands when I first heard the recording. Sarah was already in the room, grading papers, the red pen scratching through essays like a surgeon. She didn't look up when I placed the flash drive between us. Her face went pale, then hardened. The same mask she wore when she told me I was too broken to have kids, too unstable to make real choices. "Where did you get that?" she asked, voice cold. "Does it matter?" I said quietly. She stood, smoothing her skirt like she was preparing for a battle. Even now she looked perfect. Blonde hair pulled back, flawless makeup, the kind of woman who belonged in my father's world. not stuck in this crumbling cottage with a broken veteran. "I don't know what you think you heard," she said. "You're not well, Jack. You haven't been well for a long time." Her words hit like a punch. But I wasn't the one betraying everything we had built. Sarah reached for her phone, eyes filled with that familiar mix of pity and impatience. "Maybe I should call Dr. Reynolds," she said softly. Dr. Reynolds, the therapist my parents insisted I see after I came back from the war, the one who labeled me unstable, who wrote reports that kept me out of the family business. I shook my head, voice low but firm. "Don't." But it was too late. She was already dialing. I walked out, the front door closing softly behind me, leaving her voice and the weight of her doubts echoing inside. Outside, the cold air bit into my skin, but it felt clearer than the lies inside the house. I knew then, if I wanted to take back what was mine, I'd have to fight not just Sarah and my father, but the doubt they planted deep inside me. This was more than betrayal. It was a war for my life, my sanity, and my future, and I was ready. The next morning I found Emily Carter at the repair shop, elbows deep in a busted furnace. She looked up, surprised to see me standing there. "You look like hell," she said, wiping her hands on a rag. "Need a favor?" I handed her the flash drive. "I need to know where this came from." She turned it over, her brow furrowing. "What's on it?" "Proof Sarah's been cheating on me, with my father." Emily whistled low. "Jack, that's seriously messed up. Can you trace it?" She nodded toward her cluttered workbench, where a laptop sat among coffee-stained invoices and spare parts. "I might pull some metadata, but be careful. Whoever sent this wants you to have it for a reason." I nodded, knowing this was bigger than I imagined. 2 hours later, Emily called me back. "The files were created on a computer registered to Morgan Construction, your dad's company." I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. "There's more," she added. "These recordings have been backed up to at least 3 different servers. Whoever made this wanted insurance." Insurance. That word echoed in my mind. Someone inside the company, someone who knew exactly how dirty this game was being played. I drove home in silence, the autumn leaves crunching beneath my tires, thinking about who could protect themselves by sending me this. Someone who feared exposure, but wanted me to have the truth. The truth I wasn't sure I was ready for. That Tuesday evening, my phone rang while I was fixing a thermostat in Mrs. Wilson's basement. It was my mother. "Jack, honey, you missed Sunday dinner again," she said gently. "Your father's worried about you. Sarah says you've been difficult lately." I stepped outside, the cold air hitting my face as I tried to keep my voice steady. "What exactly did she tell you?" "That you're not taking your medication," she replied softly. "That you're making wild accusations. Honey, if you're struggling, we can help." I looked up at the gray sky, the last light fading behind the trees. "I'm fine, Mom. I'll come to dinner Sunday." She sighed. "Your father misses you." I almost laughed. "Does he really?" Sunday dinners at the Morgan house were supposed to be a tradition, but lately they felt like a trap. I pulled my old pickup truck into the circular driveway behind Sarah's sedan and my father Robert's sleek black SUV. Through the dining room windows, I saw them seated. My father at the head of the table, dressed in his navy blazer, my mother wearing pearls, Sarah laughing at something Dad said. They looked like the perfect family, the kind you'd see in magazines about successful businessmen and their charitable work. I walked in without knocking. "Jack," my mother greeted me with a forced smile. They were talking about the Morrison project, Dad's biggest contract in years. I took my usual seat, feeling the cold stares from Sarah and my father. Dad nodded. "Biggest job we've had in 5 years." Sarah chimed in, "I love that neighborhood." My mother suggested we consider moving closer to the lake. There was a beautiful house for sale on Elm Street. I shook my head. "The cottage suits me." Sarah added, "It's falling apart. The roof leaks. The plumbing's ancient." "I can fix the furnace," I said quietly. Dad leaned back. "Son, you're 36. It's time to stop living like a college student." The room fell silent. I chewed my steak slowly, feeling every word sink in. "The cottage suits me," I repeated. Sarah's voice was sharp. You've been saying that for 3 months. The roof leaks, the pipes burst, and the furnace barely works. Dad sighed and leaned forward. Jack, we've talked about this. You came back from overseas with challenges. I'm not less valuable, I interrupted, voice steady but firm. But I'm not trusted with anything important. His jaw tightened. That report from Dr. Reynolds was supposed to help you get disability benefits, not to keep you out of the family business. My mother shifted uneasily, clutching her wine glass. I pulled out my phone and placed it on the table. I want to share something with all of you. Their eyes narrowed as I pressed play. My father's voice filled the room, cold and unmistakable. Jack's too broken to figure anything out. Besides, he's not really my son anymore, is he? The color drained from their faces. My mother's wine glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the hardwood floor. Turn that off, my father said quietly, but his voice shook. Sarah was crying, but her tears looked calculated, like the ones she used to get sympathy when she told me I was too damaged to have children. My mother just sat there, staring at the broken glass at her feet. How long? I asked, voice barely above a whisper. 20 years, she finally said. 2 years of Sunday dinners, of Sarah kissing me goodbye in the morning, of family photos and birthday parties. 2 years of pretending, while everyone laughed behind my back. I stood up. Jack, wait, my father said, but I didn't look back. I didn't go home that night, or the next. Instead, I drove 6 hours north to a cabin I'd rented under a fake name, paid for with cash I'd been saving for years, money Sarah didn't know about, tucked away in a safe deposit box. The cabin sat on a quiet lake, smaller and calmer than the one near my family's house. No fancy lawns, no polished windows, just woods, water, and silence. For the first week, I sat on the dock, drinking coffee and watching sunrises I hadn't seen in years. No phone calls, no messages, no one demanding anything from me. I felt like I could breathe again. The second week, I began planning. What I'd learned in the military wasn't just how to fight, it was how to wait, watch, and strike with precision. Revenge was messy. I wanted justice. By the third week, I had a plan. Not a reckless act of anger, but a calculated strategy. I spent days setting up shell companies, opening bank accounts, and building a paper trail so clean it would fool even the sharpest eyes. Everything legal, everything documented, designed to look legitimate on the surface. I used skills a fellow veteran taught me, corporate security, how to protect yourself in a game built on lies. The fourth week was about gathering allies. I hired a private investigator in Chicago, someone with no ties to my family or town. He specialized in corporate fraud and asset investigations, exactly what I needed to uncover the truth and bring it to light. By the fifth week, everything was in place. I was ready to take back what was mine. On a gray Monday morning in October, I walked into the repair shop where Emily was replacing a compressor. She looked up, startled. Jack, where the hell have you been? Sarah's been calling every day for 6 weeks. Your parents too. They think you're dead. I wiped the grime off my hands, feeling thinner, calmer, sharper than I had in years. I told them I hadn't seen you, she said with a smirk. Barely true, I replied. I needed to ask her something important. If someone wanted to legally monitor audio on their own property, what's the best way to do it? Emily raised an eyebrow. Your property? I nodded. The cottage is mine, left to me by my grandmother. Sarah's name isn't on the deed. I want to protect myself, to have evidence if she tries to claim I'm unstable or dangerous. She thought for a moment. There's equipment, small, wireless, motion-activated, completely legal if it's your property, and you're not recording phone calls. How much for good stuff? About $2,000. I pulled out cash and nodded. I set up a small office above a dry cleaner's on Main Street, under the name North Star Consulting LLC, a company that existed only on paper, with me as the sole owner. Next, I opened a business checking account at First National Bank, funded it with $20,000 in cash I'd been saving. Then, I built a professional-looking website filled with stock photos of suited business people shaking hands, corporate buzzwords about strategic solutions and market optimization. It was convincing enough to fool a casual browser, but anyone who looked deeper would see it was just a shell. Rick Reynolds, my father's business partner and head of operations at Morgan Construction, took the bait. He called the number on the website and scheduled a meeting for the following Monday. I bought a suit for the occasion, ready to play the part. This was only the beginning. I met Rick at a downtown coffee shop, the kind with too much noise and not enough privacy. He stood up as I approached, a firm handshake and a cautious smile. "Mr. Patterson," I said, using the fake name I'd prepared. "Mr. Reynolds," he replied, eyes sizing me up. He was shorter than his LinkedIn photo suggested, with thinning hair and the soft build of a man more used to a desk than the field. "I have to admit," he said as we sat, "I'm curious about your proposal. Market research for construction companies isn't common around here." "Exactly," I replied, opening my laptop. "That's why there's opportunity. Most firms your size make decisions on instinct, not data." I showed him a professional presentation I'd spent 2 weeks crafting, fake market research with just enough real info to seem credible. "This is impressive," Rick said, scrolling through slides. "Where did you get this data?" "I work with regional contractors," I said vaguely. "Can't name names, but similar companies have seen revenue increases of 15 to 30%. Rick leaned back, interested. "That would be substantial," he said. "Mr. Reynolds, may I ask something confidential?" I said, lowering my voice. "Go ahead," he replied cautiously. "How much say do you have in major decisions at Morgan Construction?" His face darkened slightly. "What do you mean?" "I've done some preliminary research. Robert Morgan founded the company, but you're head of operations. Do you have autonomy to make big moves?" "I do," he said quickly. "Charles trusts my judgment." "Good, because some recommendations require fast decisions and flexibility." Rick nodded, but his eyes narrowed. I closed the laptop. "I think we can help each other." Little did he know, I was setting a trap, one that would expose the corruption and lies at the heart of Morgan Construction. The first whispers started small, anonymous posts in local business groups, subtle comments questioning Morgan Construction's recent delays. No names, no direct accusations, just enough doubt to make clients wonder. Next, I sent forged documents to Rick, suggesting that Robert and Sarah planned to restructure the company, cutting his authority and pay. The papers looked real. Corporate letterhead, legal jargon, financial forecasts. Rick swallowed the bait whole. Within days, he began questioning every decision my father made, demanding to see records he never asked for before. He started holding secret meetings with key clients, positioning himself as the reliable alternative. Meanwhile, I submitted bids through North Star Consulting for 3 projects Morgan Construction was pursuing, bids low enough to win, but too low to finish. I didn't complete a single job. After 60 days, contracts dissolved, clients frustrated and looking for other options. Morgan Construction's reputation crumbled. Rick's paranoia grew, and my father's empire started to fall apart. Hidden microphones in the cottage captured every word. Sarah's calls to my father plotting their next moves, her talks with lawyers about divorce and claiming emotional abuse, discussions with real estate agents about selling my grandmother's cottage. One snowy Tuesday evening in January, I watched from my truck as my father let himself in with a key I didn't know he had. For 40 minutes, he paced the old house, his voice clear through the speakers in my phone. "The cottage appraisal came back at $240,000, he said. "If we can get him committed, even temporarily, we can claim power of attorney and force the sale." Sarah's voice trembled. "Who's going to believe him? He's got a documented history of mental illness." My father was cold. "But what if he has copies of the recordings?" "Then we deal with it." Rick's name came up, his growing suspicion a threat to their plan. "Rick's outlived his usefulness," my father said. "And if Jack becomes a problem, well, accidents happen on construction sites all the time." I sat frozen, listening to the man who was supposed to be my father plan my end. I scheduled a meeting for Thursday afternoon at the Riverside Hotel, the only decent conference facility downtown. The invitation went to 12 people. My father Robert, Sarah, Rick Reynolds, the mayor, 3 city council members, 2 local reporters, and 3 of Morgan Construction's biggest clients. The subject line read, "Urgent financial irregularities at Morgan Construction." I arrived 30 minutes early, set up my laptop, queued the audio files, and organized folders of documents. Robert was first to arrive, confused and angry. "Jack, what the hell is this about?" he demanded. "Accountability," I said calmly. Sarah came in next, followed by Rick and the others. They whispered among themselves, trying to guess what was happening. When everyone was seated, I stood, cleared my throat, and began. "Thank you all for coming. I have information you'll want to hear." Robert interrupted, his voice sharp. "If this is about your personal issues, I'm not interested." I met his gaze steadily. "This is about financial fraud, conspiracy, and attempted harm." The room went silent. I clicked to the first slide. "Over the past 6 months, I've uncovered a pattern of embezzlement, bid manipulation, and substandard work, costing this community hundreds of thousands of dollars." Robert rose, anger flashing. "Sit down, Robert," I said firmly. He hesitated, then sat back. I detailed the Morrison development, 47 building code violations signed off by Robert despite evidence of shoddy work. I showed photos, reports, and documents proving the cover-up. The mayor leaned forward. "Do you have proof?" I played audio files, Robert discussing bribes with Rick, plotting to have me committed to seize the cottage. Gasps filled the room. The truth was out. Rick's face paled, voice shaking. "What have you done, Robert?" Robert looked around, desperate. "This is all taken out of context. Jack's unstable, manipulating." I cut him off. "You've been stealing for years. Bribes, cutting corners, endangering lives." The mayor stood. "Enough." Effective immediately, Morgan Construction's city contracts are suspended pending investigation. One by one, officials and clients left the room, leaving just my family and Rick. Sarah, tears streaming, begged, "Jack, please, we can fix this. Counseling, therapy." "No," I said. Rick stood, voice cold. "Robert, I want you to know I had no part in the bribery or safety violations. Our partnership is over." Robert glared at me. "You've destroyed everything." I exposed the truth. The story broke on Friday morning. Local news headlines screamed, "Morgan Construction under investigation for fraud and safety violations." By afternoon, regional stations had picked it up, and federal agents raided the company's offices on Monday. Bank accounts were frozen, computers seized, employees questioned. The business that had been the cornerstone of my family's wealth and reputation crumbled in hours. My father was arrested Tuesday, charged with conspiracy, fraud, bribery, and tax evasion. Sarah was arrested Wednesday, accused of conspiracy to commit fraud and elder abuse, her teaching license suspended pending investigation. Rick cooperated with investigators in exchange for immunity, revealing secrets that sealed the case against my family. The cottage was safe, legally mine, free of liens and debts. Sarah's plans to sell it died with her arrest. My mother tried to reach out through a lawyer, wanting to explain, apologize. I refused. She knew about the affair, the fraud, the plan to have me committed. For 20 years, she stayed silent, choosing comfort and status over her own son's life. Some betrayals aren't meant to be forgiven. The trial lasted 3 weeks. I testified on the second day, calmly recounting every detail and piece of evidence I uncovered. My father's lawyer tried to paint me as unstable, a bitter veteran with a grudge. But the recordings and documents were undeniable. The jury deliberated less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. My father received 18 years in federal prison. Sarah got 12. My mother was sentenced to 5 years probation and community service. The Morgan family empire, built over generations, was destroyed. After the sentencing, I stepped out of the courthouse into the cold afternoon. Former associates of my father waited on the steps, city council members, business partners, social acquaintances who once vied for invitations to Morgan family events. Their eyes held a mix of fear and respect. The quiet, broken veteran had systematically dismantled one of the most powerful families in town. The mayor approached me cautiously. "We're committed to ensuring this never happens again," he said. "Independent inspections, new oversight procedures." Good, I replied. And if you ever want to get involved in local government, we could use someone with your skills. I smiled faintly. I'll stick to fixing air conditioners. I got into my truck and drove home to the cottage by the lake. The cottage welcomed me back with its familiar creaks and the scent of pine from the surrounding woods. That night, I sat on the old wooden dock where I'd spent countless hours as a kid, watching the sun set over the calm water. For the first time in years, the house felt like home again. My phone rang, an unknown number flashing on the screen. Hello, Mr. Morgan? This is Sarah Mitchell from Channel 8 News. We'd like to interview you about the Morgan construction case, the story of how you uncovered the fraud. I paused, then said quietly, I'm not interested. We can offer compensation, she insisted. I hung up. The story was over. Justice had been served. Those who betrayed me were paying the price, and I was finally free. I poured myself a drink and settled into my grandmother's old rocking chair. Outside, winter was fading, giving way to spring, the world waking up after a long, cold silence. I thought about everything I'd lost and everything I'd gained. The empire my family built had been buried beneath lies and betrayal. But from the ashes, I found strength. I wasn't the broken man they said I was. I was someone who fought back, someone who reclaimed his life on his own terms. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, it felt full of possibility. I stood on the dock long after the sun had disappeared, the sky dark and still. The lake reflected a world I was ready to face, one where I made the rules. The betrayal had cut deep, but it hadn't broken me. I knew there were battles ahead, challenges I hadn't yet imagined, but I was ready to meet them head on. For years, I'd been a shadow, forgotten, dismissed, discarded. Now, I was stepping into the light. And this time, I wasn't alone. My phone buzzed again, another unknown number. I didn't answer. Instead, I looked out over the water, feeling the cool breeze on my face. The past was behind me. The future was mine to shape. I was no longer a victim of their lies. I was Jack Morgan, a man rebuilt from the ground up. And this was just the beginning. Months passed, and life settled into a new rhythm. The cottage became more than just a refuge. It was a symbol of survival. I spent mornings fixing things around the house, evenings walking the quiet trails through the woods. Friends I'd lost touch with began reaching out, offering support I didn't expect. But the scars ran deep. Trust wasn't something I could rebuild overnight. Every smile, every kind word had to be earned. Yet with each day, I felt myself growing stronger, more certain that I could face whatever came next. One afternoon, as I was repairing an old air conditioner at the local community center, a young man approached me. He introduced himself as Daniel, a veteran struggling to adjust to civilian life. He told me his story, how he felt lost, isolated, and betrayed by those he once trusted. Listening to him, I saw my own reflection. I realized my fight wasn't just about me anymore. It was about helping others who felt broken, forgotten, and alone. That moment sparked something new, a purpose beyond revenge, a chance to rebuild not just my life, but the lives of those around me. Daniel's story hit me harder than I expected. He spoke of sleepless nights haunted by memories, of feeling invisible in a world that had moved on without him. Like me, he carried the weight of betrayal, not just by enemies, but by the very people who were supposed to have his back. I realized then that my fight wasn't just personal revenge anymore. It was about healing, helping veterans like Daniel find their footing again. The community center became a place where we shared stories, struggles, and hope. I started organizing support groups, connecting vets with resources, and building a network of people who refused to be broken. This new mission gave me strength, a reason to get up every morning beyond anger or pain. It was about reclaiming dignity, for myself and for those who, like me, had been cast aside. Word spread quickly. More veterans showed up at the community center, seeking connection and understanding. Some came with scars hidden beneath layers of clothing, others carried pain in their eyes. Together we formed a bond forged in shared experience and unspoken truths. I listened, learned, and began to see the broader picture. How many lives were quietly unraveling in towns just like mine? It wasn't just about fixing broken machines anymore. It was about rebuilding broken lives. I found purpose in their stories, hope in their resilience, and with every meeting, I felt my own wounds start to heal. This was the next chapter. A chapter not written in anger, but in strength and solidarity. But even as I built this new life, shadows of the past lingered. Old phone calls, veiled threats, whispers from people who once ruled the town. They wanted to remind me I wasn't as untouchable as I thought. One evening, a letter arrived. No return address, just a simple note. "Stay quiet, Jack. Some things are better left buried." I folded it slowly, feeling the familiar rush of anger and fear. But this time, I didn't react. I had learned to stand firm, to face threats with calm and strategy, not panic. This war wasn't over, but I was ready, stronger, smarter, and surrounded by people who had my back. I wasn't alone anymore. The next morning I shared the letter with Emily, my trusted friend and partner in all this chaos. She looked at it with a steady gaze. "Jack, you've stirred up a hornet's nest, but you're not the scared kid you used to be." Her words hit home. I wasn't just fighting for justice anymore. I was fighting for my life, my peace. Together, we began strengthening my defenses, both digital and physical. We installed security systems, encrypted communications, and built networks of allies. Every step was calculated, every move deliberate. Because this wasn't just a battle of family secrets anymore. It was a war for survival. And I was ready to win. Days turned into weeks, and the tension in town didn't fade. Rumors swirled, alliances shifted, and the old guard watched me like a hawk. But with every challenge, I grew more confident. The small victories, clients returning, community support growing, were proof that change was possible. Emily and I met regularly, planning the next moves carefully, never letting our guard down. I began mentoring younger veterans, sharing my story to inspire resilience. The cottage by the lake became a sanctuary, not just for me, but for those seeking hope. It wasn't the life I imagined, but it was mine, and I was determined to protect it at all costs. One crisp morning, as the sun filtered through the pine trees, I received a call that shook me. It was from the mayor's office. They wanted me to speak at an upcoming town hall meeting about veteran support and community rebuilding. A chance to turn my pain into purpose on a bigger stage. I hesitated. Public speaking wasn't my strength. But then I thought about Daniel, the others, and the journey we'd all taken. This was more than just my fight. It was about creating a future where no one felt abandoned. I agreed. And as I hung up, a strange sense of hope settled over me. Maybe, just maybe, this was the moment everything changed. The town hall was packed. Faces I recognized and many I didn't. Veterans, families, local leaders, and neighbors all gathered in one room. I stood at the podium, heart pounding, the weight of their expectations heavy on my shoulders. I took a deep breath and began to speak, not just about my story, but about the pain and resilience of every veteran who felt forgotten. I spoke about betrayal, loss, and the long road to healing. But most of all, I spoke about hope. By the time I finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. The applause was thunderous, but what mattered most was the quiet nods of understanding and the new connections forged that night. For the first time, I felt truly seen. After the town hall, invitations started coming in. Local organizations, charities, even schools wanted me to share my story. I realized my voice could be more than just a personal outlet. It could be a catalyst for change. I began organizing workshops, teaching veterans practical skills alongside emotional support. Every session was a reminder that no one should have to face their battles alone. The community slowly transformed, walls came down, old stigmas faded, and trust began to rebuild. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. And with each step forward, I felt a little lighter, a little stronger. This was no longer just about revenge or survival. It was about redemption. As the months rolled on, I found myself growing into a role I hadn't expected. A leader, a mentor, a voice for those still struggling in silence. The scars of betrayal and loss didn't disappear overnight, but they became part of my story, a source of strength rather than shame. One evening, after a long day of meetings and workshops, I sat on the porch of the cottage, watching the stars emerge in the clear night sky. Emily joined me, handing over 2 steaming mugs of coffee. We didn't need words. The silence spoke volumes. I thought about how far I'd come, from the man broken by his own family to someone building a new legacy from the ashes. And though the road ahead was uncertain, I was ready to face it head on, because this time I wasn't alone. The town started to change in ways I hadn't imagined. People who once turned away began to step forward. Local businesses offered support, and community programs flourished. The veterans group I helped start grew beyond the community center, reaching neighboring towns. Letters poured in, thank yous from men and women who found hope through our work. One letter stood out, a young soldier writing from overseas, inspired by our story, promising to fight not just on the battlefield, but for a better life back home. That letter reminded me why I started this journey. Not for revenge, but for something greater: hope, healing, and the chance for a new beginning. But even with progress, the past still cast long shadows. There were days when the memories threatened to pull me under: the betrayal, the lies, the loss. I'd wake in the middle of the night, heart racing, haunted by the silence of that old cottage. Some nights the weight of it all felt unbearable. But I learned to lean on the support I'd built: the friends, the veterans, Emily. We shared the burden, lightened the load, and slowly, the darkness gave way to light. I realized that healing wasn't a destination, it was a daily choice, a commitment to keep moving forward no matter how hard it got. One afternoon, while working on a client's air conditioner, I received a call that would change everything again. It was from an old friend, someone I hadn't heard from in years. He had information, proof that not everything from my past was settled. There were still people in town who wanted to see me fail, who held grudges deeper than I thought. But this time, I wasn't caught off guard. I met with him, listened carefully, and began to prepare. Because if they thought I was done, they were dead wrong. This fight was far from over. The new threat was subtle: whispers of sabotage, rumors meant to discredit me and the veterans group. Contracts I'd worked hard to secure suddenly fell through without explanation. A few allies quietly pulled away, wary of the backlash. But I refused to back down. Emily and I dug deeper, tracing the origins of the attacks. We uncovered a web of influence reaching far beyond the town, a network determined to keep the old power structure intact. It was a reminder that change always comes with resistance. But with every challenge, our resolve grew stronger. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for every voice silenced by fear and corruption. Determined to expose the truth, we began gathering evidence: documents, recordings, testimonies. Every piece added to a growing puzzle of deceit and manipulation. We connected with investigative journalists, community leaders, and legal advisors. The battle shifted from quiet resistance to a public fight for justice. Town meetings became battlegrounds where truth clashed with denial. Despite threats and intimidation, more people found the courage to speak out. The community's spirit ignited, fueled by years of frustration and hope. And through it all, I stood firm, knowing that this fight was bigger than me. It was about reclaiming our town's future. The tide began to turn. Local authorities launched investigations based on our evidence. Key figures in the old regime were called to account. Rumors of corruption gave way to hard facts and indictments. The veterans group gained new respect and influence, becoming a beacon of hope in the community. Emily and I worked tirelessly, balancing the fight with rebuilding lives. Every small victory reminded me why the battle was worth it. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about justice, healing, and renewal. And as the sun rose over the lake each morning, I knew we were finally on the right path. But with victory came new challenges. The attention brought scrutiny, not just from the town, but from outside forces interested in our success. Fundraising became critical to sustain the programs we built. I learned to navigate a world of grants, donations, and politics, skills far from my days fixing air conditioners. It was exhausting, frustrating, but necessary. Every dollar raised meant more veterans reached, more lives changed. Emily stood by me, her steady presence a reminder that I wasn't alone in this fight. Together, we adapted and grew, ready to face whatever came next. One evening, as autumn painted the trees golden, I received a call from Daniel. He told me he'd secured a job helping other veterans in a neighboring town. It was a small victory, but it meant the world to him, and to me. Stories like his reminded me that every step forward mattered. The community we built wasn't just a place, it was a lifeline. A reminder that even after betrayal and loss, hope could be found. And as I hung up, I realized this journey wasn't just mine anymore. It belonged to all of us. The seasons changed, and with them, so did I. I wasn't just Jack Morgan, the betrayed son or the broken veteran. I became a symbol of resilience for many. People stopped seeing the scars and started seeing the strength beneath. But I never forgot where I came from. The pain, the loss, the fight that brought me here. Every morning, as I stood on that dock watching the sun rise, I reminded myself, this life was earned. And no matter what came next, I was ready. Because sometimes, the darkest nights lead to the brightest dawns. One chilly morning, I received an unexpected visitor, an old military buddy named Marcus. He'd heard about my work and wanted to get involved. Marcus brought stories of his own battles, struggles with reintegration, and hopes for a better future. Together, we brainstormed ways to expand the support network beyond our town. Our conversations sparked new ideas, outreach programs, mental health workshops, job training. The vision grew bigger than either of us imagined. It was a reminder that healing was a community effort, and with allies like Marcus, I knew we could make a real difference. Marcus and I started organizing monthly veteran meetups in neighboring towns. Each gathering grew in size and spirit, a safe space for sharing stories and finding solidarity. We connected veterans struggling in silence with resources and friends who understood. The impact rippled outwards, building a network stronger than any one person. It wasn't just about surviving, it was about thriving together. Watching these men and women reclaim their lives reminded me why the fight was worth it, and every smile, every handshake, fueled my resolve to keep pushing forward. The community we built began to change lives in ways I hadn't expected. I saw veterans who once hid their pain find strength in sharing it. Families torn apart by silence started to heal. The scars of betrayal and loss began to fade, replaced by hope and connection. Every success story fueled our momentum, proving that even the deepest wounds could mend. I realized that this journey, born from pain and betrayal, had transformed into a movement. One where broken men and women could rise, rebuild, and reclaim their futures together. And standing among them, I knew I was exactly where I was meant to be. Despite the progress, the fight to rebuild wasn't without setbacks. Funding shortages, bureaucratic red tape, and occasional opposition tested our resolve. There were moments when the weight of it all felt overwhelming. But every time I thought about giving up, I remembered those who depended on us, the veterans, their families, the community. I leaned on Emily and Marcus, drawing strength from their unwavering support. Together we navigated the challenges, adapting and growing stronger. Our mission was bigger than any obstacle, and with every hurdle cleared, we moved closer to the future we dreamed of. One day, I received a letter from a local school principal inviting me to speak to students about resilience and overcoming adversity. It was a chance to reach the next generation, to teach them that strength comes not from never falling, but from rising every time we do. Standing in front of those young faces, I shared pieces of my story, my failures, my betrayals, and my fight to rebuild. Their eyes reflected hope and understanding. I saw in them the future I wanted to help create, a community where no one feels alone or forgotten. That day reminded me that the impact of our journey extended far beyond our small town, and that every story shared could light the way for someone else. After the school visit, invitations poured in, community centers, veteran groups, even local radio stations. Each opportunity was a chance to spread the message of resilience and hope. I became more than a man fighting his past. I became a symbol for healing and transformation. But I never lost sight of the quiet moments, the early mornings on the dock, the long talks with Emily, the small victories in everyday life. Those moments grounded me, reminding me why this journey mattered. Because healing isn't a single event, it's a lifelong path. And I was committed to walking it, step by step, with those who needed it most. The local news caught wind of our growing movement. A reporter reached out, eager to tell the story of the veterans reclaiming their lives. I was hesitant at first, wary of opening old wounds, but I realized sharing our journey could inspire others beyond our town's borders. The interview aired on regional television, reaching thousands. Messages poured in, from veterans, families, even strangers touched by our story. It was overwhelming and humbling. For the first time, I saw the true power of community and storytelling. Our fight wasn't just personal anymore, it was part of something much bigger. With the increased attention, funding and support grew. Local businesses donated equipment, volunteers stepped up, and partnerships formed with mental health professionals. We expanded our programs to include counseling, job training, and family support services. The Veterans Group became a lifeline for many, a place where hope and healing thrived. Every success story reaffirmed the importance of what we were building. It wasn't just about fixing broken lives, it was about building a future worth fighting for. And with each passing day, that future felt closer than ever. Looking back, I never imagined the journey would take me here. From betrayal and loss to healing and hope. The scars remain, but they no longer define me. I've learned that strength comes from facing darkness, not avoiding it, and that the greatest battles are often fought within. Surrounded by a community that refuses to give up, I finally feel whole. The road ahead is still uncertain, but I'm ready, because I'm no longer just surviving, I'm living. This story isn't just mine, it belongs to anyone who's ever felt broken, betrayed, or alone. I won't pretend the pain disappears overnight. It stays with you, a shadow that sometimes grows too large to ignore. But it's also a reminder, a sign of what you've survived, what you've overcome. Justice wasn't handed to me. I fought for every piece of it. And through that fight, I found something more, myself. If you're listening, know this. Your story isn't over. You have the power to write the next chapter. So, what will you choose? To give up or to rise? The choice is yours. And whatever it is, you're not alone.